Cool. All right. And then once we click on the link, we have to mute our YouTube, right, for the feedback.
Correct. Yes, correct.
So can we get the link now ourselves?
You should be able to, it should be able to see it on your screen.
Mary,
It's up in the corner.
yeah, if you click top right corner where it says live on YouTube, if you click it, you can say copy streaming link. And I assume
Okay.
that.
Okay,
That's
I got
it.
it. Nice. Working.
Okay, we're getting feedback, so we,
get the link now ourselves?
Yeah, we got some more questions than what we had yesterday.
Okay, and then the questions that the students ask on YouTube Live just show up on the right-hand side, is that right?
Mike, I know she's talking to you, not me.
okay, I'm waiting to look for it.
They'll appear there.
Okay, sounds good.
How are your relationships with other soldiers? Were there any problems between soldiers in your unit? Hell no, we all had guns. We got along just fine with each other.
Okay, I have feedback on my end. How about you guys?
I don't. Oh, maybe a little bit actually.
It looks like there's a bit of a time lag. Like we'll say
Actually,
something
there's-
on the Zoom and then it appears later on
Yeah,
the.
I'm sorry,
So, Bill, is your YouTube?
there is,
on?
there,
It looks like there's a bit of a time lag.
yeah, there is, now that,
Something on the Zoom
now,
and it appears later on.
yeah, Amanda, you're right. I believe that the lag is, it was discussed. It's like,
So I think either Lisa or Bill, maybe you have your YouTube Live not muted.
One, I don't have YouTube.
Oh, okay, so it must be, maybe it's Lisa. Lisa, are you there? I don't know what happened to Lisa.
Are we sharing the link now to the YouTube Live for the kids?
What do you
you
guys
need
think?
to
Yeah?
share it. Yeah, you need to
I
share
did.
it.
Just so they can start like getting on if they want to get on there early.
Okay, I'll share it too then.
Okay.
Okay, that might have been me.
Okay.
Hey, I'm just learning, you know? You got two audio controls here. You got the Zoom and then you got the YouTube Live.
I'm glad you're handling all this.
I thought my hair was gray before. Now I'm going to start losing it.
Hey, join the party.
Okie dokie.
Remember, God is great and God is fair. Gave some men brains. The rest of them got hair.
Boy, you're very articulate this morning, Bill. You must have had 3 cups of coffee.
No coffee today.
So I guess we're just waiting for Kelsey and who else? Casey?
Kelsey says she's going to be in a meeting, so I don't know when she's going
How
to.
many total teachers are?
Okay. So who else are we missing besides, so Lisa? Yeah, okay, all right. So it might just be the 4 teachers then, right? 5 teachers? 5 teachers, yeah.
Okay. 36 now watching.
Oh, nice.
Wow. That's a fast start. Okay, I'm gonna try to, I gotta figure out how to get back to my Zoom controls to share. To share the PowerPoint. Well, I just don't know.
Mary, the kids are starting to write in the chat.
Oh no, I don't know how to get
Can
in the
you hear
chat
me?
myself.
They're just like going through the chat, like just commenting like, hi, good morning, hi. They're all hyper, clearly. They're all excited.
Okay. I can't even join the chat myself. I can just like see what's being posted.
It's down at the bottom, Mary.
But you do have to create a YouTube channel in order to be able to say something.
So,
Yeah.
how do
So
you-
I just created like a Amanda Sanchez channel. So I'm on YouTube now. But now I can post and comment and stuff. So I just gave like a welcome beginning comment.
okay, got
Okay.
Oh,
it.
Okay, can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I had some tech issues. And so I'm super late. What do we do for our students?
So Lisa, if you go up to on this Zoom window on the top left-hand corner, see where it says live on YouTube?
Yes.
Yeah, if you click that button, you'll see there's two options: view stream on YouTube or copy streaming link.
Yes.
If you click copy streaming link, you can paste that to your Google Classroom and the kids will
Okay.
be able to view it on YouTube.
Okay, great. Are we doing that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's already a number of students that are watching right now. 16.
Yeah.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
tell them to hold on. I'm trying to figure out how to get the PowerPoint up.
I'm gonna, I guess I'll email the streaming link to Casey and Kelsey so they can post it for their students. Because
Okay.
otherwise, I don't know how their kids will, if they're not on, I don't know how their kids will get the link unless a friend sends it, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, I just emailed it to Carter myself.
Okay.
Boy.
The chat's going to be interesting during the next hour and a half here.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like we maybe should just ignore it, or because right now it just is a lot of uselessness.
That's all right. I guess it's like everyone's saying hi, but
I think it's funny.
we'll have to all watch
like,
for
During the
questions.
presentation, tone it down, but I think,
Yeah, for now, fine.
Yeah. But I think we'll have to all watch for questions because there's like so much coming up too.
Yeah.
This is gonna be fun once there's like 300 people in here.
Well, if I don't get this PowerPoint up,
Mike, are you sharing your screen?
that's what I'm trying to get at, and I'm stuck. I got to figure out how to not lose the YouTube link, but should be able to share. I may have pushed the button prematurely because the share button on the YouTube channel doesn't do me any good. Wait a minute, let me try something here.
Also, Mary, if you had the presentation and you're co-host, you might be able to share it as well if you can still see the share screen down at your bottom.
So I don't have the presentation,
Oh, wait,
but
hold on. I think maybe, whoops, whoop.
Woof, woof, woof.
Whoop. How do I turn off the YouTube live from my side so you can still see everything? Because it's on there.
so Mike, do you have your presentation up
It's
on your?
It's on my laptop. All I got to do is hit hit the share button from the Zoom screen, but I don't have a Zoom control to let me do that.
So when you hit share screen, you should be able to see like all the
I know,
different options.
the problem is I don't have the Zoom icons to do that. I'm in YouTube right now, and I gotta, here, let me try this, hold on. Nope,
I'm able to still see a share screen button on my end.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would work if someone else like Mary can get the presentation on her computer and she'll be able to share her screen. I don't know how that, we could try.
yeah, hold on. Need to call you back.
Mhm.
Okay. There we go. Hold on. I did something that caused it to work.
Yay! It's working.
Yay. We're in business.
There you go.
And with 3 minutes to spare.
That was a close call there.
Way to go.
So everybody, is it a full screen view or are you seeing the whole?
No, it is not full screen.
Okay.
Yes.
There
All
you
right.
go.
Okay, great.
All right.
Okay, now we've
I
got.
don't know what I did, so at least we got back to where we needed to be. And it's still showing the YouTube live up in the upper corner?
Yep.
And we got 134 students watching as of right now, so that's great.
Wow. Good job, guys. Sorry, I don't mean to be chauvinist. It's just that's what do you say instead of good job, guys? Good job, everyone.
Folks, people.
Am I still up on there, Michael?
Yep, I see you. You need to, you're cutting off the bottom of your face a little bit in the screen. So tilt your screen or just lean forward a little bit.
He wants to make sure, Teddy.
I lost the picture of me.
If you hit the bottom arrow button underneath the column of pictures, you can see yourself again.
There you go. I can see a full face there, Bill. Handlebar, mustache, and all. All right, how are we doing on time here? Time to start. What's the count now, Mary?
Let's see, it's 11:14 and we've got 155 students watching.
Awesome. All right. So if you want to go ahead and do a quick introduction, then we'll take over and drive this puppy to till 12:30. And I've got my watch on right now so I can keep track.
Okay, so ready to get started?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. We're really glad that you're able to join our virtual assembly today. This is something that Dublin High School has been doing for many years now, and despite the fact that we're in shelter in place, we definitely wanted to make sure that you guys didn't miss out on this opportunity. So we've got Mike and Bill with us here today, and we're extremely grateful that they are willing to give up their time and share their stories and their experiences with us. So the plan is we're going to be starting right now 11:15. We'll be roughly over by about 12:30 or so. If during the presentation, you think of any questions that you want to ask Mike and Bill, feel free to put something in the chat feature there on YouTube Live. All right, and so Mike, if you're ready, I'll.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Martin, and I'm a United States Navy Vietnam veteran, and Bill Green is a United States Army Vietnam veteran. Before we get started, just very quickly, want to set the stage and tell all of you, thank you very much in the fact that most of the young people in today's world have recognized veterans of having provided service and you all are saying thank you for your service. And that is fantastic that you're doing that. I want you to start thinking about, though, if you see a veteran and if you can figure out that he is a Vietnam veteran, he or she is a Vietnam veteran. What I want you to do is to tell him 2 additional words, but tell those other 2 words first. And those 2 words are welcome home. And then say, thank you for your service. Welcome home was words we did not hear when we came home from Vietnam. And you'll understand a little bit more about that as Bill and I go through our stories and tell you about that. Vietnam veterans were located everywhere in South Vietnam. And the term that we use is boots on the ground. All the branches of service were there, including the Coast Guard. The Navy had 3 different categories of personnel. They had Navy that had boots on the ground. Down here in the Delta area, they had brown water Navy guys. We were in small boats and would go up the rivers. And then we had the blue water Navy that were in the bigger ships offshore that were providing gunfire support and a lot of supply ships, et cetera, et cetera. The Coast Guard was there. They worked primarily down in the Delta area as well, providing coastal interdiction. Air Force had Air Force bases in country, but they also flew missions from all over the place. Hold on. Thailand, the Philippines, Japan, they flew long-range missions, refueled on their way to do bombing runs in both South and North Vietnam because we did a lot of bombing up here in the Hanoi area. So what I want to show you now is some statistics that I was able to capture from the Department of Defense. The conflict lasted a very long time. It says there 61 to 73. I'm here to tell you that we had personnel located in South Vietnam as advisors in the 50s. President Eisenhower had approved the insertion of those folks. In fact, I'll talk about it. And anyway, sorry about that. 2,594,000 American military men and women served in country in Vietnam. Notice, ladies, there was only 7,484 military women, and most of them were nurses. There were other ladies that were there that worked for the Red Cross, the USO, a number of other agencies. Vietnam Memorial Wall has 58,229 names. You can all take a quick gander there. But about 20% of the names are classified as non-hostile deaths. Not everybody died due to enemy action. Non-hostile deaths could be something as mundane as a trucking accident, a snake bite, a spider bite, friendly fire, helicopter crashes that were caused due to mechanical reasons, not anything else. Notice that the 21 years or younger, 61% of the men were in that category. In fact, I'll just digress for a second. There are a number of young men that forged their parents' signatures to get in the military. The youngest person on the wall is only 15 years old. And it's then there are, I think, 4 or 5 that are 16 and 4 or 5 that were 17. If we found out that they were younger, they were immediately booted out. And then what some of those young men did, as soon as they became of age, they went in and re-enlisted. Kind of interesting. Missing in action, 2,538. We found about 900 of those bodies so far. Sometimes body parts just were not able to be found. One of the interesting perceptions about the Vietnam War is that most of the people that went in country to fight, they were all drafted, and it's simply not true. The statistics show that 25% of the total forces that served in Vietnam over the entire conflict period were in fact draftees. They got drafted, they got trained, and they got immediately shipped over there. That just didn't happen that way. Here's some more facts. 97% of Vietnam veterans were in fact honorably discharged, and not one single combat unit that served in Vietnam ever surrendered to the enemy. Let me talk very briefly, sorry about that, about Mike Martin. Mike Martin graduated from high school in June of 1965 on a Friday. The very next Monday, I started at the University of Arizona in summer school. And on Thursday of that first week, because I was already 18 years old, I received a draft notice. My draft notice, I was in the original form of draft notices, not the lottery system that maybe some of you have talked about. I went down and reported when I was scheduled to report. It was 3 or 4 weeks later. I was, through the graces of God, I was very lucky and was told that they were going to give me a 2S deferment, which let me stay in school. I was a military brat. I took that as a blessing and said, if I'm going to have to go in, I'd rather go in as an officer than an enlisted guy. So I found a program through the United States Navy that allowed me to stay in school. And if I achieved my degree, I would be able to go to officer candidate school. I did. I successfully engineered that. And in 3 years and 3 full summer schools, I ended my last classroom work in August of 1968 on a Thursday. I got on an airplane on a Friday, and on Saturday, I reported to officer candidate school in Newport, Rhode Island. I completed officer candidate school in end of October of 1968, and I was commissioned by an act of Congress to become an officer in the United States Navy. My entry rank as an officer was ensign, and that's the same rank as a second lieutenant in all the other branches. At the same time they told me that, they said, oh, congratulations, we're also going to make you a Navy Supply Corps officer. And you get to go to school in Athens, Georgia for 6 months. I went to school down there to learn all the job functions, supply job functions that would be on board a United States Navy vessel and all the different pieces of that. And what they were teaching us to do is to be able to audit and manage the particular pieces of paper that you needed, and also teaching us some HR, some personnel management things, and how do you manage people as well. Upon completion of that school in May of 1969, I got orders to go to Vietnam. There was 5 of us from our school. 3 of them went on board ships and 2 of us went in country. And it was quite an adventure, to say the least. I ended up being, after receiving some minimal training, prior to going to Vietnam, I got on an airplane at Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino, California, and flew into Da Nang right here, which is the northernmost port city in South Vietnam. I was assigned to the Naval Support Activity in Da Nang, and I was assigned to the Freight Operations Division, and my job title was Freight Expedite Officer. In English, what that means, I was 22 when I arrived in Vietnam, and I was assigned to manage a fleet of trucks and drivers that were moving the cargo from the piers to wherever it was going in the greater Da Nang area. Let me just share a couple of pictures about Da Nang. Here's the downtown Da Nang area. There's a military Jeep there you see, that's a military truck, motorbikes, bicycles, and people on foot. If you blinked your eyes and said all those vehicles are 2015 versions and saw all the bikes and bicycles and people on foot, that's the same picture you would have if it was 2020. Hasn't changed much in that regard, except there now are a few high rises in Da Nang. That was kind of interesting. Cement floor here on this little fast food joint. Cement floor here on a apartment building. These buildings that were in an urban area were owned by upper middle class. Otherwise, most of the people are out in the countryside near the rice paddies, and villages are in hooches or huts that are made from bamboo frames with banana tree leaves and different things that they could make to try to make the village secure. You'll see pictures of other hooches as we go through this presentation. Here's a farmer's market. There's a market every day for people to share their goods and services. Here's a couple of policemen, very hot and humid. When I got off the airplane in Vietnam, it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit and it was 98% humidity and it wasn't raining. I was soaking wet by the time I got off the airplane. That was how bad it was. See, these kids here are all wearing hats or something to protect themselves because we were right near the equator. Shell gas station. This is Red Beach. This is an area where the Marines landed in 1964-65. Back in this area back here, you can see the brown dirt area. That's the Marine Corps ammo dump where a lot of the ammo was being shipped to. This area today in 2019, 2018 is now the new.
Okay, I found this on the web.
Hold on. I don't know what's going on here. This area is now the first or second resort area in all of Southeast Asia. This looks like Waikiki Beach or one of the beaches in the Bahamas with the high rises and the swimming pools and the tennis courts and the golf courses and all that. Tourism is like either number one or number two industry in the old South Vietnam. Capitalism is alive and well there. Ships waiting in the harbor to be unloaded. The smaller ship in the foreground is a harbor patrol boat, United States Navy. Here's a ship, a Navy ship with a cargo ship. Notice these are poles with pulley systems, and if you look very carefully right here in the middle, there's a big net with boxes or bags or something in it. The cargo back those days, we didn't have containers like you have today. They were manhandled through these pulley and winch systems, moved out of the holes of the ships onto the deck down here on the pier, and then put onto trucks so we could move the cargo out. The worker bees that were doing all that work were called stevedores, and there are still stevedores today, but in a whole different kind of a category. Here's a merchant marine ship, same pulley systems. Here's some of the trucks and drivers that I managed. The drivers that I had the vast majority of my drivers were South Vietnamese. I didn't know whether they were on our side or the other side, but they were working for us. And in fact, occasionally about once a week, I would lose one of these smaller trucks that had maybe 2 or 3 pallets of either beer or soda. That truck and driver would head off and go into a village, and the truck would be stripped. The key would be left in, and the shore patrol later would find that truck with the key in it and said, "Hey, Mr. Martin, bring a driver and go get your truck. It's sitting there empty, waiting for you to come get it." This is called Bridge Ramp. This is an area where we transshipped cargo up the river to Army units, Marine Corps units, etc. And this is where we unloaded the ammo. We would never unload ammo at the piers that I showed you in the earlier pictures. They would come in on one of these mike boats. These are little boats or barges that we had put the ammo on from the ammo ships. We would, our goal was to immediately get that ammo off the ramp during daylight hours. Nighttime, the enemy would try to shoot mortars and rockets trying to hit something if they could. This semi-truck trailer loaded here and the one over here on this side, those are all pallets of 500-pound bombs going to the air base and the Marine Corps ammo dump for their air base stuff. Here's a picture of some Huey helicopters, the workhorse vehicle in the Vietnam War. We'll show you more pictures of those later. These next series of pictures I'm showing are damage that was done to a supply depot area. Oops. That's Mike Martin, 52 years ago, 50 years ago. Of course, it was 50 pounds ago too. So the damage that was done in all these buildings, the interesting part here is that there was no direct hit on any of the buildings. A rocket hit a small South Vietnamese Army ammo dump that was next door to us. and the explosion caused a chain reaction of 12 pallets of stuff to go up, and the energy wave that came out from that explosion caused all this damage. These doors here, if anybody's ever worked in a Mickey D's or any kind of a fast food place, you know, you have those refrigerators with a great big massive doors. Those are what those are. They were just literally ripped off their hinges. So I got about 3 more things I need to talk about. At night, I worked day shift moving the cargo. Night shift, I became the duty officer, security officer at Bridge Ramp. At nighttime, I would have to assign 2 sailors to get into a small outboard motorboat. Their job was to drive back and forth across the width of this ramp, which was about 300 yards, back and forth, back and forth. And what they would do is drop concussion grenades in the water periodically. Why did we do that? Because the enemy would put swimmers in the water with explosive charges to try to slow us down. Luckily for me, during the entire year that I was there, we never had any enemy action, but I did in fact have an incident that occurred in, it was March or April of 1970. 2 of my sailors didn't do their job correctly. It appears what happened is that a live grenade fell into an open box of other grenades and literally disintegrated every and anything that was around that explosion in that small outboard motorboat. Those 2 young men are still classified as missing in action. That was a horrendous situation that occurred for me, especially because I had assigned both those young men. I had talked to them just before they went on duty. I ended up, as the officer in charge, having to write home a letter to the parents, and it took every ounce of energy that I had, and with the help of a Navy chaplain to be able to do that, because it really, really affected me, and it's one of my issues with my post-traumatic stress disorder, which we'll be talking about that a little bit more. 2 more quick stories. The
R&R.
yeah, R&R rest and recuperation time. All of anybody that went to Vietnam got 1 R&R. You got to choose to where you wanted to go. You could go to Hawaii, you could go to Australia, you could go to Thailand, Japan, the Philippines, et cetera, et cetera. I chose to go to Australia, Sydney, Australia, down under, and I went in February. February is summertime down there. And everything that I read about things down there, the women were beautiful, the beaches were beautiful, it was summertime. So I went down there and had a very, 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 very good time. I had such a good time that I almost didn't make it back to the airplane to come back. Luckily, my guys came and got me and dragged me by the scruff of the neck to get back on the airplane. So that was
all the pictures you have here. Where's the pictures of Australia?
Don't be a smart guy now, Bill.
I know. I've just been wanting to see them pictures.
And as I've always told you, yes, I found a roll of 35 millimeter film in a little canister. And I found it about 10 years after I came back. And in fact, there were some pictures on there from Australia. And when I saw them, I knew that I had to not show those to anybody. That canister of film today is in my safety deposit box, and it's going to stay there because I don't want my daughter or my 4 granddaughters to ever see that film. All right. I did receive, though, something that I make a comment always. Remember, I said I wanted to be an officer. And as an officer, rank has its privileges. And for us in the Naval Support Activity in Da Nang, we received a Presidential Unit Commendation Medal for the work that we were doing in moving cargo. The senior officers of our command gave the junior officers of our command a second R&R, and I chose to go to Bangkok, Thailand. And I had a very, very, very good time. And no, Bill, I didn't take any pictures there. Coming home, now that's a whole different story. I left Vietnam on July 5th. Arrived in the U.S. because of the dateline on July 4th, and I arrived at a commercial airport, Los Angeles International. Most of our guys were landing at the military bases, Travis Air Force Base right up the road from us here in Fairfield, and then McCord Air Force Base up in the greater Seattle area. Back in those days, there was no TSA, there was no security checks the way that we got it today. People could come right up into the concourse, and that's what they did. It was July 4th, and we got off the airplane and walked in, and we walked right into smack into the middle of a war protest. All of them were wearing their hippie garb of the day with their peace medal sandals. A lot of them had signs, baby killers, this, that, the other. It was pretty oppressive. There was no welcome home. A young lady got in my way. I mean, literally stood right in my way and wouldn't let me go by. She used every adjective and foul language in the book, calling me everything. She ended up calling me a baby killer, and then she spit in my face. Yes, the stories you've heard about people getting spit on are absolutely true, and I wasn't the only one. Luckily for me, I had been briefed a little bit that we might expect something like this, because my reaction was I was going to cold cock her. But I knew that if I did that, I would be the one arrested and get thrown in jail, and nothing would happen to her. So I finally did a basketball move, and I did a fake to the left and went to the right and went around her and got by and got to the closest bar I could find and bought a cold American beer. And that I spent, because of my commitment as an officer, I had to spend a couple of more years in the military. I spent a total commitment of 4 years versus 2 for the draftees. I was stationed at a Marine Corps base for a little while. Then I got stationed at an Air Force base. I never got stationed at a Navy base, interestingly enough. But I was always doing Navy work at all of those commands. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And if there's any other questions, they can be passed on. What I'd like to do is introduce Bill Green, United States Army.
All right, is my picture on there, Michael?
Your picture's on there.
Okay, I can't see it.
you.
Okay. I'm Bill Green, and unlike Mike Martin, who just spoke, Mike was an officer and a gentleman in the service of his country. I was neither. But like Mike, I graduated high school in 1965. And like Mike, I went directly into college, but unfortunately, I didn't last long in college. Matter of fact, I fell just short of 1 full semester. I went to college for one reason and one reason only: party hardy. Mission accomplished. Okay. The major I took in college was fast cars, pretty girls, and beer. I forgot that I was supposed to study. Thus, the quick exit out of college. I didn't get the grades to stick around. I continued to party hardy for over a year and a half afterwards. A buddy of mine named Hugh Roach that went to college with me. Hugh got thrown out at the same time. And Hugh, instead of partying hardy, Hugh decides he joined the Marine Corps. In the spring of '67, I got word that Hugh was killed in Vietnam. This moved me greatly. Somebody I was close to, the first person I was close to, was killed over there. I felt maybe it was time I do my share. I had a couple other buddies that were serving in Vietnam at the time. And the loss of Hugh, I ended up going down to the Army recruiter, and I tried to sign up for Special Forces Airborne Infantry. I was refused enlistment. I was refused enlistment because I checked a box that said I had asthma. Okay? And I was informed that an asthmatic could not survive in Vietnam. Therefore, they didn't need me. 2 months later, though, I got this letter in the mail that you're looking at. This is 2 months after I tried to enlist. I get a letter that says, "Greetings. You are hereby ordered for induction into the Armed Forces of the United States." That is my draft notice that you're looking at there. That was the dreaded letter all young men were afraid to get in the mail. This is 2 months after the Army said I wasn't good enough to serve. The Army drafted me. In August, I ended up in a place called Fort Bliss, Texas, and there I did my basic training. Basic training is just what the word is, basic. They teach you to be a soldier. They teach you all the rules of the military. They also get you in some of the best physical shape you'll ever be in your life. You get yelled at, you get screamed at. You're taught to obey orders. You're taught to not to question. Just do it, obey it. While I was there, I volunteered for airborne infantry. You see, in 1967, the Army was unlike the military of today. Today, we outsource a lot of jobs in the military. In 1967, every civilian job you could find was in the military. I didn't want just any job. I didn't want to be a cook, a clerk, a truck driver, a mechanic, or any of those other jobs that you could have had to help run the Army. What I wanted to do was give me a gun. I wanted to fight. The Army granted my wish the second time. And upon completion of basic training, I was sent to a place called Fort McClellan, Alabama, for my AIT. That's my advanced infantry training. At AIT, you're taught to use every weapon and care for every weapon that an infantry soldier uses, starting with a .45 caliber pistol and working your way up to the M16 rifle, the 79 grenade launcher, the machine gun, M60 machine gun. All these weapons you had to learn how to take apart and put back together with your eyes closed. Blindfolded, you could do it. You had to service these weapons, and you also had to learn how to hit what you were shooting at. In combat, something could happen and your weapon could malfunction, and you had to pick up the closest weapon to you, whatever it was, to continue the fight. Okay. You were also taught how to use hand grenades, different types of hand grenades, smoke grenades, plastic explosives, we called it C4, det cord that we used to set off plastic explosives. I was taught map reading. I was taught booby traps. I was taught, most importantly, first aid. First aid because sometimes you're in combat, the guy next to you goes down and the medic isn't anywhere near, and you're going to try to keep your buddy alive. You're going to take care of your buddy. Okay. You're also taught hand-to-hand combat. Everything it took to be a soldier. You have to realize when you went to Vietnam as a grunt, an infantryman, you were a small percentage of all those that served in Vietnam. It took over 8 guys to keep one of me in the jungle. Less than 20% of us were outside the wire, in the bush, doing the fighting. So when you see pictures and movies about everybody's running through the jungle with a gun in their hand, it's a crock. Less than 20% of us were up close and personal with the enemy. I landed in Vietnam upon completion of all my training on the 13th of January, 1968. I landed in a place called Chu Lai, which is just south of Da Nang. This is where my division base camp was, the Americal Division. I rarely saw my division camp. Okay. I was sent about 5 miles farther north to a hill called 69, and this is where the 1st of the 46th of the 198th Infantry, that's what I was assigned to, 198th Light Infantry. The areas that I worked in, though, were to the far west, along the Laotian border. These are high mountains and thick jungle. This is jungle so thick, it's referred to as triple canopy jungle. Okay? A triple canopy jungle, you can look up during the day or at night and never see the sun or the stars or the moon. It's one layer upon another layer of vegetation. If the canopy of the jungle opens up enough for the sunlight to get down and reach the ground, well then, The undergrowth gets so thick, a point man needs a machete to cut his way through. A point man. Point man's the guy that leads the element. Okay? This was my job for my first 6 months in Vietnam. Your responsibilities as a point man. Because I had extensive training in both booby traps and map reading, this is why I was assigned this job. Now, I've got 3 responsibilities as a point man. The officer in charge or the sergeant of the unit will come to me and show me on a map the destination, the objective of this unit for the day. My job is to get this unit to that objective. Okay? I'm the lead guy. Everybody follows me. Along the way, I have 2 other responsibilities. The first one being is booby traps. Vietnam was infested with booby traps. Both the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong used them extremely successfully, obviously to cause casualties, but to slow us down, okay? To hinder our movement. Your job as a point man, find those booby traps, you disarm that booby trap so the men behind you can pass safely. Your last responsibility as a point man is do not lead this element into an ambush. There are bad people out there looking for you, you're looking for them. You have to realize as a point man, you make contact with the enemy, not every time, but over 90% of the time, the first shots that are going to be fired are either going to be by you or more than likely at you. I did this job for my first 6 months in Vietnam. I did not have to do this job for 6 straight months. Okay? I voluntarily stayed at this job. I enjoyed it. It was an adrenaline rush. Okay? The reason you didn't stay that long at this job, it was a very hazardous job. Okay? The mortality rate on point men were quite high. At the end of 6 months, I rose to the rank of sergeant and I took over the 3rd squad of the 3rd platoon. And my lieutenant comes to me and says, Sergeant Green, find a new point man. It's not your job anymore. I said, I can continue to walk point and run a squad of men. He said, no, you can't. He says, your job now is to lead these men into battle, not to be the first man down in an ambush or a booby trap. I had to give up that job and I didn't like giving it up. It was the only point man that unit had for those 6 months. I lost the first 2 men I assigned that job to. The first one I lost to a booby trap. The second guy I lost to an ambush. Now, both these guys survived their wounds. Neither were killed. But neither completed their tour into Vietnam due to the severity of their wounds. They were sent home early. Point man, this is over half my tour in Vietnam. And these are the memories I have. As a point man, I saw every living creature that crawls, slithers, or makes its way through the jungles of Vietnam. Well, all but one. I was told there were bears in Vietnam. You know, I never saw a damn bear in Vietnam. In the spring of '68, I can tell you, I saw 2 tigers along the Laotian border. There were still tigers in the spring of '68. Animals I didn't like. Well, number 1 on the list, monkeys. Yeah, there's a picture of a monkey. I hate stinking monkeys, okay? Flea infested, dirty little critters. There's a reason point man hates monkeys. I'm going through the bush. I'm leading a line of guys. We're trying to be as quiet as possible so the enemy doesn't know what our location is. The monkeys are up in the upper canopy of the jungle. And as soon as they spot you, they start screaming and yelling. They're alerting the rest of their clan that you, an intruder, are in their area. Well, unfortunately, the North Vietnamese had ears too. So when they heard the damn monkeys yelling, they knew I was coming. I hate monkeys. Snakes. You know, I ask every class I speak to, and unfortunately, I can't see your faces and I can't see the hands come up. And I ask each class, anybody in here likes snakes? And the first thing I'll tell them before you even get to raise your hand is, if you like snakes, you're a sick puppy. There's nothing to like about snakes, and I hated damn snakes. And as a point man in Nam, I'm the guy that ran into all the snakes. We had some of the most poisonous snakes in the world in Vietnam. We had 2 types of cobras. Everybody's heard of a king cobra. There's also a spitting cobra. We had several different types of vipers. All these snakes are extremely poisonous, and it's the point man that ran into these snakes. The only creature I had a good relationship with in Vietnam, that picture you're looking at there, that's me 52 years ago. On my shoulder, there's my good buddy.
How many pounds ago was that?
That was probably close to 70 pounds ago. You got a loft light on 50. Anyway, on my shoulder there's George. George is a good buddy. Okay. You see, George is a young mongoose. They ate snakes. George and I had a great relationship. I enjoyed George a lot the short time I had him. Relationships. I talk to every class about relationships. I talk about the relationships among fighting men. You know, I am closer to the original 10 guys that served in my squad in Vietnam. And as Mike goes through these pictures, you're going to see how young some of these faces were of the guys I served with. Okay. I'm closer to them than I am my own brother, and God knows I love my brother. But these men have a place in my heart that I can't hardly explain to you. I ate with them, I slept with them, I fought with them. I tried to keep them alive. They tried to keep me alive. I knew everything about these guys. There was no secrets among us. Okay? I mean, this is 52 years ago. I have a hard time remembering what the hell I had for dinner last night. But to this day, I can still tell you the names of the original 10 men in my squad. I can tell you what state they were from. I can tell you what town they were born in. I can tell you how many brothers and sisters each one of them had. David Ingersoll from New Jersey. He was the only guy in my squad that was an only child and didn't have a brother or a sister. Hell, there's nothing I can't tell you about I can even tell you what the hell their girlfriend looked like, because God knows they told me enough times what she looked like. There was no secrets among us. Unbelievably close to these men. The unfortunate thing is you're not with these men for an entire year because things happen in combat. Out of the original 10 of us that started this journey in January of 1968, 9 of us were wounded. Out of the 9 that were wounded, 4 of them, including myself, were wounded multiple times. Out of the 9 that were wounded, 2 of them were amputees. Out of the 9 that were wounded, 7 of those men never completed their tour in Vietnam due to the severity of their wounds. They were sent home early. And every time I lost one of these men, I got a replacement troop. We used to call them NFGs. That stands for a new weapon guy. By the time I made sergeant in June of '68, and I took over the squad, I started to realize when we got an NFG into my squad, I didn't want to know all of his personal information. I didn't care what state he was from. I didn't care what town he was born in. I sure the hell didn't care how many brothers and sisters he had. I didn't want to know anything about this man, except for, now he could always tell me what his girlfriend looked like. For that, I'm all ears. But all the rest of that personal information, I didn't want. Why? Because I didn't want to get close to him. You see, I was close to the guy that he replaced, and I lost him, and it hurt. And I didn't want to go through that hurt again. And I was under the stupid impression that if I don't find out all this information about you, I won't get close to you. And if I don't get close to you, if and when, and I probably will lose you too, it won't bother me a bit. They'll just send me another NFG to replace you. But it doesn't work that way. Sooner or later, that young man will start talking to you and you'll learn all that information, even though you didn't want to hear it. And when you turned around and realized he kept you alive and you tried to keep him alive, and you ate together, you slept together, and you fought together. And you grew as close to that guy as the man that he replaced. And if and when you did lose that young NFG, it hurt as bad as the man he replaced. I left Vietnam in January of 1968. During my tour in Vietnam, I was wounded twice. Thus, if you can see my window box, shadow box up on the wall there, I have 2 Purple Hearts in it. I also have 2 Bronze Stars for my actions in the field in Vietnam. You know, as a grunt, you're a grunt 24/7. There's no 12 hours on and 12 hours off. Okay? You're lucky if you got 5 hours sleep a night. And it was never a continuous 5 hours sleep because you had to get up and stand guard over the other 2 guys in your hole. As a grunt, there's no bathrooms out in the jungle. There's no showers out in the jungle. I probably took 5 showers in 1 year in Vietnam. And I probably slept in a bed maybe 5 times in the course of that year. Now, obviously, I was hospitalized a couple of times, maybe more than a couple. And I did go on 1 R&R. Unlike some people in this world, they got more than 1 R&R. Yeah. What else can I tell you? I came down, I contracted malaria while I was there, dysentery and jungle rot. Being a grunt was pretty hazardous to your health. When I got home from Vietnam, I had over 6 months to do in the military, so they sent me to Fort Lewis, Washington. And when I got to Fort Lewis, Washington, my job there was to train young men. And I trained young men to do the job that I had left in Vietnam. And in August of 1969, I was discharged from the military. My commitment as a draftee of 2 years was up. And I'm free to go home. Now, when I went home, I didn't talk about Vietnam a whole lot. I tried to put it in a box, bury it in the back of my head. I didn't want to talk to it with other people. We weren't popular when we first came home. And if you went to a party, a bar or something, somebody would find out you were a Vietnam vet, and inevitably they'd start questioning you about Vietnam. And inevitably they'd start telling you what they thought about Vietnam. And I'd ask them, you know, what the hell do you know about Vietnam? You were never there. Okay. Inevitably we'd get in an argument, and I sure the hell don't like to lose arguments. So I found it was a lot better to shut my mouth and don't even acknowledge the fact that I was a veteran. I grew my hair long, grew a big long beard. I blended right into the society of 1969 and onward. Okay. As time goes on, my wife and I have a couple of kids. And my son is maybe 6 years old or so. And he finds a box in the closet, a keepsake box. You know what a keepsake box is? That's where old people like me hide our memories. Marty finds this and he's going through the stuff in the box and he asks his mom, what's all this stuff? And she says, well, that's your dad's stuff when he was in the military. First thing Marty says is Daddy was a soldier. We didn't talk about it in the house in those days. It was kind of a taboo subject. Peg in her wisdom turned around and asked Marty, look, Pop gets home tonight. Why don't you ask him? Maybe he'll tell you about when he was a soldier. I got home that night and the kid's sitting on the couch, and on the coffee table in front of him was all this stuff that he found. The little arms are folded and his little chin is up in the air, lips sticking out, stern look on his face, and he goes, we got to talk. And I go, holy crap, where the hell did you get this attitude at 6 years old? Obviously from your Irish mother.
Well, of course, it had nothing to do with the Irish father.
Not a bit. The kids asked me some tough questions. My daughter asked me the toughest question of all. Is the reason you didn't tell us is because you're ashamed? I said, hell no. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of serving my country. I'm not ashamed of fighting in Vietnam. I'm not ashamed of anything I did. Okay. If I had to do it all over again, I'd do it again in a heartbeat without hesitation. Well, the kids went and bought me the shadow box that you can see behind me up on the wall. And they asked me to place all the medals that I received during my service into that box. Hang that box in the favorite room of the house, the room you're going to see it every day. So there's the box. Right now I'm talking to you from my bar, my favorite room in the house. Okay. The Vietnam War is still killing veterans today. We suffer from two basic things. We suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and we suffer from Agent Orange poisoning. So let's take this one at a time. First, PTSD. I was diagnosed with it in 2002. I was having a very hard time in life at that time. I went to the VA. They sent me through all types of counseling. I asked, why does this just starting to bother me now? And I was told, you've been suffering from this since 1968. Okay. I went through individual counseling. I went through group counseling. Hell, I went through anger management. My brother was quite happy I did that. There was a book I was given to read, and it was called Achilles in Vietnam. You know, Achilles, that old Greek. The author of that book tries to draw parallel lines between the ancient Greek warriors and the writings about those warriors and the Vietnam veterans, and how they both suffer from the same disorder, post-traumatic stress. Now, that was a long time ago with those ancient Greeks. In our own nation's short history, in the Civil War, they called it soldier's heart, or plain old insanity. In World War I, it was called shell shock. In World War II, they called it battle fatigue. And when Mike and I first came home, they called it delayed stress syndrome. They always had a name for this crap, but they never recognized it as a treatable disorder until the early 90s. Post-traumatic stress. Anybody can suffer from it. You don't have to be a combat veteran, for God's sakes. Probably the worst description I can give you is you're in a car wreck with your best friend. You survive and they don't. And your last memory of your best friend in this world is their bloody body. Hell, years down the road from that incident, you too could possibly suffer from post-traumatic stress. Okay. What's the difference between that and combat PTSD? How about you're in that car wreck a couple of times a week over 52 weeks? That's what combat PTSD can be. Agent Orange. Agent Orange is a herbicide that was used in Vietnam. You guys know what Roundup is. Your folks use it in the yard, spray it on weeds, you kill weeds. Well, this picture you're looking at, this is Roundup on steroids. They sprayed it on jungles. In a short period of time after that jungle was sprayed, the next picture is going to show you what the jungle looks like. There's nothing green in this picture. It's all dead. It looks like a forest fire went through there. Hell, there's not even a stinking monkey left up in that tree. And him I don't miss. But the rest of that gorgeous jungle is gone. Why did we do this? We did this for one reason only. We did this because it took a hiding place away from the enemy. Where are you going to hide 500 guys in a pile of sticks? No longer do you have to take me, the grunt, and insert me into that thick jungle to root out the enemy. Now all you have to do is fly over the top of it, and you can spot the enemy. The unfortunate thing was there's a byproduct of Agent Orange. It's a dioxin that got into the water system of Vietnam. And today it can still be found in some areas in Vietnam in their water. This is the water up in those mountains that I waded in. Remember the guy that only took 5 showers in the course of a year? Well, I bathed. This is the picture of some of the guys on my squad taking a bath in that stream that flows out of the mountains along the Laotian border. Okay. Some of that water carried the dioxin of Agent Orange in it. I waded it in, I bathed in it, and I drank it. But I'm a grunt. A grunt's the most generous person you'll ever meet. Why? Because we share amongst each other. Everything we had, we shared with each other. Well, I shared that water with the rest of Vietnam. And Mike, who's 90 miles away, eventually those streams flowed into rivers and got to Michael. And he drank that same water. He drank that water that I waded in up in those mountains. He drank that water that I bathed in up in those mountains. He drank that water that I redeposited back into that stream up into those mountains.
I drank my water with scotch.
Yeah, well, I remind Mike about that every time he told me about his second R&R. And I looked at him and smiled and I go,
yeah. Rank has his privileges. Yeah.
remember, Mike, stay thirsty, my friend. Mike Joyner and I went to high school together. It's a quick story, and we're going to go to questions. Mike and I, hell, we indulged heavily in fast cars, pretty girls, and beer. And Mike he got drafted the same time I did. By the way, the picture you're looking at on the screen right now, these are ailments that Agent Orange will cause. And if any serviceman that served boots on the ground in Vietnam comes down with any of these ailments, the VA will take care of it for us. How generous of them. Well, Mikey and I got drafted together, went through basic training together. And Mike asked me at the end of basic training, he ended up in the infantry. I volunteered for it. He got volunteered for it. Mike went on to he went to Louisiana, Fort Polk, for his basic training. But anyway, Mike ends up in Vietnam. He never got wounded. He was very fortunate. But when he came home, he did suffer terribly from post-traumatic stress. And him and I were alike in so many ways. Well, all but one. Mike loved to play golf, and I think it's the stupidest damn game I've ever seen in my life. But Michael loved it, okay? And his wife loved it. And we both had a couple of kids, houses, and mortgages. We both had long-term marriages. We both worked in the trades in downtown San Francisco. And Mike's idea of retirement was when he got old enough to retire, he was going to take his two girls, make sure they got the education that they needed, and send them down the road of life. And he was going to sell his house and buy a house on a golf course. So him and his lovely bride, Donna, could play golf the rest of their life. And Mike could spend his rest of his days hitting that stupid little ball with that stupid little stick. Mike never got his wish, though. In August of 2002, Mike Joyner succumbed to Agent Orange poisoning long before he could retire. Now, Mike Martin told you that there's a wall in Washington, D.C. with over 58,000 names on that wall. I can tell you right now, Mikey Joyner's name is not on that wall, but sure as I'm talking to you. Now I'm killed, Mikey. It just took 35 years. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Bill. You okay?
Yeah.
All right. We want to open it up to questions. We have a few questions too. To get things started, we'll just maybe get the juices flowing a little bit. And there's always a question I ask all the students, and we have a lot of fun doing this, especially when we're in person. So it's not quite the same now. But were there drugs in Vietnam?
Good drugs. I've been told.
All right. Peanut Gallery is at it again. Peanut Gallery is at it again. Yeah, we'll just go real quickly into this so we can cover other stuff. Remember, I was one of those guys that Bill just mentioned. I was a rare area guy. I was one of those 7 to 8 guys supporting those guys outside the wire. The young men that I had working for me, now remember, I was there from 69 to 70. And in 1968, what was going on back here at home? It was the age of Aquarius, right? For the teachers, you remember that? It Everything was free, free love, free booze, free drink, free drugs, everything, And so the culture that they were coming from and going into the military at that time was already a drug culture. They were smoking weed all the time. My guys in the rear area, we were somewhat like being at home, except they would shoot at us every once in a while, and we'd have to go run and get in a bunker. Those kids would be working 12 to 14 hours on, and the rest of the time off. So it was shift work. What would they do in their idle time? They'd get into trouble. They'd smoke, they'd drink, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the young men went a little bit more than that. One young man, very industrious, very sharp sailor. He was so sharp, he says, I can beat this. I'm going to start a business. He did. He got caught, and he spent time at Fort Leavenworth, the federal penitentiary. One young man tried to steal one of those Mike boats that I pointed out to you that was on the bridge ramp with the gate in the front. Well, he got so stoned to the bejesus that he was going home to San Francisco, and he was going to drive it across the ocean. He didn't get the ramp all the way up. Thank God for small favors, because he passed out. The Shore Patrol was able to get on board. The Harbor Patrol guys, they were able to get the ramp up and pump out that boat, took it back to shore. He obviously got arrested, went to court, and spent time in the federal penitentiary as well. Bill, tell them about drugs out in the bush.
Okay, Vietnam was a very long war. And as Mike said, things changed. Drugs weren't that common in 1965 when the first ground troops hit the ground. 1968, there were drugs there. I joke about drugs an awful lot, but it was a regular candy store. Anything I wanted, I could have got. That's not to say I used it or the men in my squad used it. Okay? First of all, the majority of the places you found the drugs obviously was in the rear area, and we were out in the bush, so you really didn't have it to your disposal. The reason we didn't, well, let's face it, we were not choir boys. That's not why we didn't use the drugs. We didn't use the drugs because our job was to keep each other alive. And you're not going to put your hands or your life into the hands of somebody that's stoned. It's not going to happen. You break into a 3-man group out in the jungle at night and you're sleeping, and one of the 3 of us always have to be awake to guard the other 2 in the night. You're not going to go to sleep knowing that the guy that's looking over you is stoned. Not going to happen. The objective of war is to eliminate the enemy. And how do you do that? You do that by finding his weaknesses. You capitalize upon that weakness, and you can defeat that enemy or any enemy. There's no greater weakness in this world than drugs. And I don't care if you snort it, smoke it, inject it, rub it all over your fat little tummies. I don't care what kind of drug it is, legal or illegal. It's a drug. Your body is a temple of your spirit. You're only going to get one. You best take care of it, because the sins you commit against that young body of yours today will haunt you later in life. Trust me, we know. Mike?
All right, comment from me, just to keep it short. We mentioned movies quite a bit. There are a ton of different movies about Vietnam. The best movie in the veterans' opinion, and those are the guys that served there, is We Were Soldiers. It's the Mel Gibson movie about one 3-day battle. Highly encourage those that have not seen that movie to watch it. There are flashbacks during the movie, so there are some interesting interaction about things happening at home as well. We had one man who was an officer over there, Army officer, and he was located one valley over from where this battle occurred. And he said he was there at the time the battle was going on. He said the movie brought him back to Vietnam at that time, But the only sense that he didn't feel, so he could see the things, he could hear the things in the movie. The only thing he didn't get was the smell of Vietnam. A pretty powerful statement. And it affected him because he was talking at one of our events, and it caused a little flashback for him in a PTSD. Bill, you got any good questions there you can share with us?
We got a few here that was given to us. The first one, how were your relationships with other soldiers, and were there any problems between soldiers in your unit? I'm a grunt out in the field. We're all brothers. Okay, sometimes brothers fight, but it's never serious. After all, we all had guns. Okay. Now that question may also lead up to race relations. 1968, Martin Luther King was killed. There was no problems between myself and anybody else in my squad, no matter what race, what religion, or whatever. It mattered not. When we went to the rear, though, after the death of Martin Luther King, that's when you started to notice a difference. The brothers would kind of hang out with themselves, and then separation would come between us. But we were only back there for a short period of time, 3 to 4 days max. And then I was back into the jungle on another patrol, another mission. And when we got back into the helicopter to fly back out, we're all brothers. We're all the same.
Where I was in Da Nang, I didn't feel anything like that. We had a big cross section of all different kinds of the races, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, for all of the time in Vietnam, the percentage of the blacks was a little over 10%. It was in one of the earlier slides. The least represented minority that we had in the military on the U.S. side was the Asians. Very, very few.
Jerry,
Yeah, I didn't have, I just didn't see that era. Now, later on, after even I left and from 70, late 70 through 73, when everything started happening, things were going on where people were really pushing back. There were, in fact, the term fragging came about. So there were situations like that where some hatred bubbled up. But what's interesting is the fragging occurred on almost on both sides. It was blacks doing it, there was whites doing it. So it was really non-racial situation. It was just people were angry. People were taking things out on authority, I guess is the best way to put it. Another question, Bill.
do you know how your family was feeling before you went to Vietnam, before you joined the war, and after you got back? I remember the only time I remember seeing my father cry was the day he took me to the draft board. He was extremely upset that I was going into the Army. He didn't know 2 months earlier that I tried to enlist in the Army. I kept that from him. He didn't want me in the Army. He served in the Pacific in World War II. He was a Navy man. And he told me, join the Navy, you'll have a warm bed and a hot meal every night. That's not what I wanted. When I got home, I was treated extremely well by my friends and my family. People who love you, they take care of you. Okay. They were quite happy that I made it back. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I grew up in a military family. I had uncles that served in both the European theater of World War II and the Pacific theater. My stepdad was had become a military officer. He served in World War II in the Pacific as an enlisted man, came home, took advantage of the GI Bill, got his college degree, and became an officer in the military. So I had warm welcomes because it was a family unit that had military experience, and they're proud for people that served in the military. were they all happy campers about what was going on with the government and all that? Just like us, not everybody was a happy camper. But when I came back, I was still in the military, so I was in what I call a cocoon. You know, when I went outside that cocoon, there were animosities and people would take cheap shots and do all that kind of stuff. But when I was in the cocoon, it was a safe haven, and so that helped me with my later transition. Although the coming home part is still something that's on my mind. Go ahead, Bill. Another question.
Did you experience any munition or food shortages during your tour? Munitions. Okay. The government was quite generous with me. You know, all I wanted to carry, I could have. Okay? As a grunt, if I carried an M16, I carried over 20 magazines, 20 rounds per magazine. You never quite filled it full. Okay, you always left it a little bit less so you didn't compress the spring on the magazine too much. So I had 18 rounds in every magazine. I had over 20 magazines. So I carried approximately 400 rounds of ammunition. I carried 4 explosive hand grenades. I carried 1 concussion grenade. I carried a couple of smoke grenades. I carried a Claymore mine. I also carried 4 canteens of water. By the time you got finished with Grunt's carrying close to 100 pounds of equipment from the steel pot on his head down to his boots. Never. In firefights, I had firefights where I came close to running out of ammunition. In the Battle of Cam Duck, I was down to my last couple magazines, and I was picking AKs up off the enemy soldiers and grabbing their ammunition. As if I ran out of my M16, I was going to start using their AK on them. Food. Food I ran out of a few times because weather would hit us and you could not get resupplied in, you know, but it never got really overly drastic. Mike, I know you never had a shortage of food.
Remember, rank has its privileges. Bill's talking about food coming in a box and little cans, and with the P38 can opener, they do their stuff, and he'd use take a pinch of Claymore and light it up and warm up his B2 steak unit or whatever it happened to be. I was the Navy supply officer in charge. I lived in what a little barracks they call the officers' quarters. I had a cot. And I had sheets, and across the courtyard was the officers' club where we could get drinks and that, and the USO shows would come. Every Sunday, I was charged with getting extra rations of food to bring it to the officers' club so we could have a barbecue every Sunday, and we would have steak and lobster every Sunday for the officers. So that's what Bill's talking about, that we didn't go for not on our food. What else we got, Bill? We got about 6 minutes.
Okay.
We need to start a wrap up.
Remember, being a grunt wasn't a job. It was an adventure. Okay, next question. Are you thankful to any extent for the experience you had fighting in the war? There's a lot to be thankful for. Obviously, I made it home, so I'm very thankful for that. And I'm very thankful for my brothers that made it home also, okay? I'm thankful for the experience that I learned in Vietnam. I'm thankful for the leadership qualities that I learned in Vietnam. It was $1 million experience I wouldn't give you 2 cents for. Michael.
Yeah, amen. I probably being an officer going in, you're trained to be a leader and doing things in that regard. And it helped me in after I got out of the Navy, put me into leadership roles, being able to talk in public and doing things of that nature. So it had a lot of positive effects from that standpoint. Every single individual man or woman that goes into a combat situation has their own set of experiences. Those set of experiences can lead to certain kinds of images or things that you remember in your head. And those are the things that we remember sometimes that are not good, which are the cause of PTSD. Bill talked about, said he was diagnosed with PTSD in 2002, I believe you said, Bill.
Are we wrapping?
I was diagnosed in 1996. I had some major PTSD episodes that were triggered by a number of things, but the combat PTSD triggered other things to be brought up that were in my memory banks. And like Bill said, you can get PTSD from a number of different things, not always combat related. Because of that, all of us did that went through that and were able to step up and say, okay, I need help. We talked to individual counselors, therapists, psychiatrists, group sessions, all the different modes of therapy. Bill and I have been through it. One of the ones I found to be very, very effective for me was writing therapy. Just let your mind go and write. What Bill and I have been told as we've gone through incremental sessions is that we are unique individuals in the fact that we do not have a fear of public speaking. And especially we do not have a fear of sharing our stories about Vietnam. Many of you may have parents that were in combat. Some of you teachers may have had parents that were in the war, but they would never share. And that was PTSD. But we have a unique ability to share. And because of that, it helps us to help you all to understand from a different perspective. I want to take a minute. Bill, do we have any other things that I missed anything before I close?
We got tons more questions.
Well, go do about two more, then I'll do our thank you.
Okay. How well did the training you received before heading to Vietnam prepare you? We were very well trained, okay? But nothing prepares you for live rounds being thrown at you. Nothing prepares you for the loss of a brother standing alongside of you. So there was a lot of things you were not prepared for. They prepared us the best they could. Mike?
What I would just share with you, my training prior to going to Vietnam, once I got those orders to go to Vietnam, I was sent to 2 weeks of a session in Coronado where the SEALs get trained. And I spent 1 day at Camp Pendleton. I got 45 minutes at the M16 range, and I got 45 minutes at with the pistol, the 45 pistol. That was the extent of my weapons training. Was I ready? Did I feel ready? Heck no, didn't feel ready. Thank God I never had to use a weapon. My entire year in Vietnam, I never put my finger inside a trigger guard. So as it relates back to my story about being called a baby killer, you understand why I react the way that I do, because I never put my finger in a trigger guard. Whereas other guys did, and that's a different aspect of things. One more, and then we'll wrap.
Who or what was your motivation to keep doing your best throughout your time in Vietnam? I think it's the way I was raised. Okay, if you're going to do something, do it the best you can, or don't bother doing it at all. And I recommend that to anybody. If it's worth doing, do it right. That was my motivation. And when I got to Vietnam, you had to do it right. If you didn't do it right, somebody could suffer. Michael?
I ditto that. The key is, I mean, one of the questions, so one of the other kids asked, were you afraid when you were in Vietnam? And Bill and I always answer that question. The second they opened the door on the bird when we landed, and the fear never goes away because you just didn't know what was going to happen. Anytime, day or night, something could happen, even for us rear area guys. Now, our rear area was mostly at night, but that neither here nor there. The fear went away when we got back on the airplane going home. The door closed, and none of us breathed safely until we were wheels up and out over the South China Sea. And then we were all yelling and cheering and screaming that we're on that Freedom Bird and we're going home. That's the feeling that I had.
As
All
far
right.
as fear goes, honest to God, all the firefights I was in the course of that war, I do not remember fear during the firefight. You were trained to react to whatever action there was. There's a reaction. And you continued doing what you had to do to stay alive and keep your buddies alive. When the firefight was over, that's when the fear hit me. I can remember trying to light a cigarette, and it took both hands to hold my lighter because my hand shook so hard after the fight was over. And you tried to hide it. You didn't want somebody to see that you had lost control that much. Mike.
All right, thanks, folks. As I was telling you about the PTSD and the therapy, what those guys are telling us is that us doing these talks to the students that we do every year, and we now over the last 20 years or so, we have presented to just about 90,000 kids in that period of time. But we always end the talk with this comment, is we want to thank you all for listening to our stories. And on behalf of the Vietnam veterans of Diablo Valley and Bill and I, we want to thank you all for being our therapists for the last hour. So thank you very much. Have a safe rest of the time in school this year, or whenever you get back into the school. Have a safe summer, and God bless all of you. Thank you very much.
Hey, guys, gals, have a safe summer. Thank you for listening, and we thank your teachers for allowing us to talk to you.
So all the students can log off. I'm going to stay on for a minute so I can debrief with the teachers. Bill, if you want to bail out at this time, that'll be good. I'll see you later this evening for our membership meeting.
Go ahead. I'm going to stick around and listen to the teacher.
Okay. I can't see if they're logging off on the YouTube live. Are they? Can you see them logging off?
I can see them logging off, but potentially you could just close out the link so that they are done listening.
Okay, let's see if I can do that. Stop. Okay, I'm going to stop the share.
There you go.
Gosh, everybody wants me.